And welcome back. Dave Egner is here, of course, with the Wilson Foundation. Good to see you again.
Zoe, it's always great to be with you.
It's always great to have you at the desk. So I want to discuss the Wilson Foundation's work and interest in after-school programs. Working families, we don't need to say, are struggling with childcare needs. And this can take them out of the workforce, which is something we're talking a lot about the conference this year. How big of a problem is this right now?
Well, it's interesting. After school is important from a number of standpoints. The notion of it being helpful in providing childcare or latchkey type programming is almost ancillary to its overall importance. But you've hit a critical point. In today's work world, while that after school continuing to work with two-parent households working is very difficult.
I mean, we're actually hearing, particularly post-COVID, just some members of families not going back to work simply because either they can't afford childcare, or in some respects, it's easier to be a stay-at-home parent and doing that work. And that means, again, someone not in a job.
Right, and think of the single parents that sometimes struggle with 2 and 3 jobs, and you can't leave a 10-year-old at home. So after school is important from that aspect. And it's also important, Zoe, think about what learning loss during the pandemic. We've got to make that up. There's only so many hours in a school day. And so without after school, I don't think we'll ever have the learning loss catch up we're going to need in this state or any other for that matter. Yeah. And then think of careers for students. I'm a junior achievement kid. Back in the old program days when you used to start companies, it uncovered a career for me. I would probably, actually I was going to be in broadcasting. And I decided at that moment entrepreneurship made a lot more sense to me. So I ended up in that kind of role and transitioned that into philanthropic kind of entrepreneurship. So that uncovering of a career pathway was critical to me finding my way into this work.
So what do we need to do? How do we fix this, David?
Well, for every one kid in after school, there's 4 kids waiting. So there's really 3 things we have to think about. One, how do we increase the number of kids that can get into programs, the number of young people that can get into programs? And that can be done through increasing the number of kids into a single program, the number of programs available, et cetera. But that's going to require continued funding, both from philanthropy and from the state. The second thing we've got to do is think about infrastructure. So there's the Michigan After School Partnership. There's the work that MyLeap is doing now to look at after school.
Right.
Who's going to quality check these programs? Who's going to navigate people to them? Without that infrastructure, we simply won't get young people into the programs that make sense. And then the third thing is back again to funding. What is that? How do we continue to have ongoing funding for the programs? There's more money now in the state of Michigan than there has been historically. It's making a huge difference, and our hope is that will continue.
Do the folks who need to hear this message understand the issue at hand? Or are you still having to even message about the fact that this is an issue? Or are you actually at policy solutions at this point?
I don't think it's understood for a number of reasons. One, think about, I shouldn't say this, I'm much older than you, so think about when I grew up, not when you grew up. It was a different era, and you thought of the school system differently. We've stacked so much responsibility into the organized K-12 school system. At the same time, we've watched the cliff or the gap between those systems that are affluent and those systems that struggle increase. You can't stack anymore in those systems. And so there's a misunderstanding, I think, that after school is somehow an ancillary or a helpful, nice thing to do. It's becoming an absolutely critical part of the education day. Whether you're extending STEM education through after school, which we've seen, or whether you're dealing with this issue of career unveiling or exploration, or frankly providing a safe place to develop children while you're still at work. So we've got to address this for what it is. It's a very capable opportunity to add to the education system in a meaningful way.
Are there states, and maybe it's not even states, maybe there's communities in Michigan who are doing it right? Like, where can we look for some models? I have to believe we don't have to create this on our own, and that we can look at some best practices.
Our colleagues at the Mott Foundation have funded nationwide on this issue and have done more in after school than any other philanthropic funder in the country. And they would say the model to look at to begin with is California, all because of Arnold Schwarzenegger. When Schwarzenegger was governor, he put forward a ballot measure that put after-school funding in the mix permanently. They have over $1 billion budget for after-school. So that's one way where money makes a difference. In other states, it's about that infrastructure, finding the intermediary that's coordinating all the work, and that's happened in multiple places. But this commitment by the state to put money in after-school has moved Michigan up into the top tier of after-school funding and after-school opportunity. So let's take advantage of it and grow it.
We're talking a lot here at Detroit PBS this year about imagining the possibilities. And I'm curious if every student in Michigan had access, if every parent of every student in Michigan had access to these kind of after-school programs, what would this state look like? What could we be?
Our talent gap would be very different. We've had Michiganders that would have come up through a system better prepared for whatever post-high school looked like, whether that's into credential that is for skilled labor, or whether that's prepping for college. Back to my own personal experience, without that junior achievement program, I wouldn't have walked in my first day of college and declared a major in business administration. I would have ended up, well, I could have been in your chair, which would have been really, really fun.
Wonder what you would have been interviewing me about.
I would have probably been asking you the same question. So Zoe, what are you most hopeful about in Michigan?
Oh, you're asking me. Wait, I didn't think we were turning these tables. You know what? At this conference, it's pretty incredible to watch 1,500 people talk about what the future can look like. It's a pretty amazing thing.
The energy of this conference just grows every year.
Yeah.
And my calendar gets busier at this conference every year because there's just so many opportunities to connect and try to get those beliefs and dreams in a place where they can become a reality.
Yeah. Well, Dave Egner with the Wilson Foundation, always a pleasure to talk with you
always
here at the
desk.
desk.
Always good to interview you too, Zoe.
Right, exactly. Thanks for the time.
Sure.